We have, let me see. No, we don't have do we have a motion? I forgot.
I do not believe we have
I do not believe it was a previous motion. Okay, Mr. Johnston moves item number 8 as proposed to be amended by staff on item 8, page 4-3 of the council checklist before you. Is there a second?
I just want our attorney to respond to the comment.
Okay.
He has responded in the past. I think he's working on the WRP1. I think I'm not the expert on takings. I will go find Chris and ask him to come back and respond. For me, one of the co-equal goals is to protect and restore the ecosystem, and this is the only action that we're taking really to protect the ecosystem. It is a fundamental part of the co-equal goals, and I don't know how we say we are achieving what the legislature told us to do if we don't take some affirmative action to protect them. And so that's why I'm so strong about this. As I don't know what else there is that we can do given our charge to develop an enforceable plan and meet the legislature's intent. So I'll go find Chris.
Randy.
I'll second it for the purpose of discussion. If the maker of the motion has a comment, I do. I would be satisfied if you just simply added the word significant in front of impacts. Significant impacts to the opportunity to restore habitat. I could support that because if it's an insignificant impact at the time of the property acquisition, those capital investments in whatever it is that was insignificant would be accounted for, and the agency that was had done that particular insignificant covered action would be reimbursed. So I would, I guess. Offer for the council's consideration that slight amendment to that policy.
On which line?
ERP3, line 15, begin the sentence with significant impacts to the opportunity to restore habitat instead of essentially all impacts.
Here's Mr. Stevens. Mr. Stevens, we are discussing file item number 8, which is the second part of the referenced mapping of potential habitat territories.
Okay.
The council has just unanimously approved item number 7, which references a similar map but has a different focus. Randy has just gone to ERP1 on page 148 of the staff draft. P3, protect opportunities, and he is proposing on line 15 to insert before the word impacts the word significant.
I'm sorry, it's going to take you a second. Where are we?
Go to talk to the staff draft Delta plan.
No. This is an issue that you and I have talked about off and on. And we're talking about ERP3, the policy that requires that we protect the opportunity to restore habitats.
Right.
And Mr. Zuckerman testified that he was in conversations with an attorney yesterday who advised him that this policy was had the potential to expose the council to claims of inverse condemnation, that this was a regulatory taking. And I know you and I have talked about that in the past, and Councilmember Gray asked what the legal opinion would be about that.
Yeah, we've taken a look at whether or not this would result in a taking, and actually I have the benefit of working with some fabulous attorneys from the land law section at the Attorney General's office who litigate takings cases regularly, and they've assured me that this policy would not result in a regulatory taking. Although Mr. Zuckerman has raised the issue before, and it's an issue that rightfully we should have taken a look at, and we did. So I think that the way that it's drafted now, again, keeping in mind that this deals with covered actions, and the fact that it's going to be applied in a reasonable, common sense manner, as are all of our policies. But with regard to this specific land use issue, we've taken a look at it. We don't, in our opinion, it will not result in a taking.
I would like to amend my motion to incorporate Randy's word change.
Okay, then, Chris, reflect, if you will, on Randy's suggestion to include the word significant on line 15, page 148 of ERP3.
I think that that's okay, and I think that that's consistent with the whole idea of having significant actions and having significant impacts built into the definition of covered action. So I don't think that's inconsistent with what we're talking about.
Okay.
So.
All right, so we've got a motion and a second to approve number 9 with the insertion of the word significant in ERP3 before the word impacts on page 148, line 15. Discussion. Ms. Yes, Ms. Gray.
Supervisor Natoli, does that word make a difference?
I think that's helpful. It doesn't go far enough, Gloria, but I do think that's helpful. So I think it provides some clarification in the sense that some of the things that Joe talked to relative to some of the projects that might be of a more minor nature that still would be a covered action. And I think that you would give the benchmark for significant versus insignificant or more modest. But I think I'm just in light of some of the other considerations. I think that the impacts of just putting this overlay, and I know that when we had this conversation some months ago that I expressed some concerns. I think staff has gone worked to address some of those, but I'm still not prepared to support this yet, Gloria, with that words.
Okay. All right. We have a motion. We have a second, starting with Mr. Johnston. Call the roll.
Johnston, aye. Gray, aye.
Fiorini, aye.
Eisenberg, aye.
I totally know.
Okay. 4-1, adopted. Okay, now those two are out of the way. Let's see. At 11 o'clock, Ms. Mazzarella and Ms. Kirk, at 11 o'clock, we're going to get a report back on attempts to communicate with Contra Costa County, who was not available to answer questions yesterday, and we'll start up on the Bethel Island discussion then. Let's start then go in the risk levy section, and also Mr. Fiorini and Mr. Johnston, you're going to, in approximately 3 minutes, review and hopefully distribute to us and to the public some suggestions you have to make. So let's start the risk discussion, which, members, is starting on item number 11. RRP1, prioritization of state investments in Delta levees, etc. And Mr. Ray.
Yes, the 4 items we're bringing back to you from the risk reduction chapter, and the first of these is in response to a concern raised by Mr. Zuckerman at the panel at our last meeting, a concern that the plan wasn't sufficiently clear that local efforts to improve levees beyond the standards that the state was willing to fund were acceptable. And, there was a concern that we were setting a standard for levee improvements, the way the language was drafted. And we've tried to say all along that efforts by local landowners or reclamation districts or others to upgrade their levees beyond the standards that the state's willing to fund are encouraged and that they're consistent with the plan. And so just to try to clarify that one more time, we proposed a slight modification to the narrative to express that a little more clearly than it had been, because it's not our intent to say in anywhere in the plan that if you as a local district have got the ability to improve your levies to a standard that you think is appropriate, you shouldn't be able to pursue that. And so that's what we're trying to do with the first change that we're proposing there. That would just be a change to the narrative, not to the policy.
Okay. And members, if you'll note, you'll find the language in question here on page 7, line 36. Page 7, line 36 of the draft Delta plan. All right. On this